Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that might make me sound a little bit uncharitable. I don't know, that's certainly not my intent, but we'll have a chat about it and we'll see how it works out. The question before us today is as follows. What happens when people who don't really have any language learning talent learn languages nonetheless and learn them for a very long time? What happens when people like that put thousands of hours into learning a language? There are people on the internet, people on YouTube who suggest that we can all learn languages. We all have that fundamental talent. I mean, after all, we all managed to learn our own languages, didn't we? That proves supposedly that we all have the ability to learn languages even as adults, even when those languages are foreign languages, and all we have to do is put in the time and the effort. Well, I don't believe that. I don't think there's any good reason to believe that that's true. But I don't claim to have definitive proof that it's not true. What I would like to do today is think about this particular problem through the prism of a person that I encountered several months ago on YouTube. You know what YouTube is like. You just randomly stumble upon videos. You don't know the channel, you don't know the video, you don't know the person, but sometimes you click on things and you have a look, right? We all do that, I suppose. Well, maybe about 6 months ago, maybe more, I can't remember, I stumbled upon a video that had been put together by a guy, young white guy, probably American. I actually can't remember who he was. I can't remember his name, can't remember the name of his channel. And I think that's a good thing. I wouldn't mention any of these details anyway, because I'm not trying to embarrass the guy. But I stumbled upon a video made by a guy who'd been studying Japanese intensively for a long time. He'd been studying Japanese intensively for a number of years, and he'd certainly put 4,000 or 5,000 hours into his Japanese. I know that because he explained his study routine and how long he'd been studying for. So, most of the video was basically about this guy talking about how he'd studied Japanese, wasn't particularly interested in that, but he promised that towards the end of the video he would speak in Japanese a bit so we could gain some insight into how good his Japanese had come to be. So I kind of fast forwarded to that part of the video because I was quite interested. And there was a peculiar segment, about a minute in length towards the end of the video, where the guy spoke Japanese. It was fairly clear to me that what he said was all stuff that he had scripted. It was basically a prepared talk. Let's call it that. Let's call it a prepared talk. It was quite interesting and disturbing at the same time. The guy had obviously learnt some Japanese. He was obviously capable to some extent of putting sentences together in Japanese, but there were some substantial chunks in this 1 minute presentation in Japanese where I have to admit I could not understand what he was trying to say. And I rewound and listened over and over again. And I thought, well, he might be trying to say this, he might be trying to say that. But to be honest, I couldn't figure it out. And there was more than one section like that in a presentation that, like I said, was only about a minute in length. It was quite spooky and quite disturbing to see how poor the level of achievement was, even in a prepared presentation, and even after several thousand hours of effort and dedication. The guy was not completely hopeless. His brain had obviously absorbed some Japanese. He spoke with a peculiar anime type delivery and intonation at times, which was simultaneously impressive in the sense that he'd managed to pick it up, and depressing in the sense that he probably didn't realize how inappropriate and outlandish that sort of Japanese would sound most of the time. You don't really want to sound like an anime character in real life, trust me, you don't. Anyway, I felt for this guy. And I asked myself what it was that he was trying to accomplish with his Japanese, and I asked myself why he had persevered with something for so long, despite the fact that he obviously wasn't very good at it and didn't really have any talent. Did he not know that he wasn't very good at it? Did he perhaps not know that he wasn't very talented? And that he was probably never going to be genuinely good at Japanese? The answer, of course, is that I don't know. But here's what I want to say. When I was studying Japanese many years ago at university, there were a pretty decent number of people on my course. And throughout the first year, most of those people, over half of them, dropped by the wayside. People just quit Japanese at a rate of knots. And it's probably true with Chinese, Arabic, other things like that too at university. But some people made it through into the second year, but even amongst those people, it was always clear that some people were just not very good at Japanese. They didn't have very much talent when it came to Japanese, and they were never going to be very good at it. I was younger and more arrogant and less understanding of other people then, and I probably felt a certain degree of contempt for not all of these people, but some of them. They weren't putting in the hours, they weren't that talented anyway. I was more talented, I was putting in the hours, I probably had some sense of superiority over them. I can admit that now, I probably wouldn't have liked to admit it at the time, but that is probably how I felt. Now here's what I want to say. I look back on that now and it occurs to me that the people who were not putting in the hours and not making that much progress were probably just being smart. They had probably realized, consciously or subconsciously, that they weren't that good at Japanese, that they would have to make an inordinate effort to make any real progress in the language, and that they would always be outspoken, outread, out-Japanesed, out-competed by people like me and other people even more talented than me. So they were actually making a relatively rational decision to do what they had to do to pass their exams and to get through their degree and to get a degree, but no more than that. It is helpful in life to realize what you're good at and what you're not good at, and on the whole, to pursue your strengths and not your weaknesses. Yes, there are probably contexts in life in which we can and should work to develop skills, hobbies, pastimes, endeavors, even when we know that we're not that good at them, not that talented at them. But generally in life, I think it's reasonable to say we should work to our strengths, not our weaknesses. And that's what these people were generally doing at university. One of the things that I find very disturbing about certain modern trends in language learning, and probably in other things too, is that people are not making rational decisions about where they should direct their time and their energy and to some extent their money in life. And I see that very clearly to some extent in the Japanese learning community, and I saw it very clearly in the video of this young man who was trying to learn Japanese. Why would he persevere with something that he was objectively not very good at? You've got to understand, it takes real discipline to put thousands of hours into anything in life. And I do admire what he was trying to do, but my heart bleeds for him because he's never going to be any good at Japanese. When you're young, when you're in your late teens, when you're in your early 20s, maybe even when you're in your mid-20s, for many people that's sort of a golden period in their life. They're young, they have the motivation to spend time working on things that are important to them. Often they're still financially supported by their parents, so they don't have to work. Many of them are at university. Maybe they're not at university, but they can still live with their parents for a while. So they don't have to work. They don't have to get normal jobs. They can commit huge amounts of time to pursuing things that they would not be able to pursue otherwise. And it's very disturbing to see people basically wasting their time, beating their heads against the wall, trying to learn a language that deep down inside they should have figured out by now they cannot learn. There's something peculiar about this modern online Japanese learning community, whereby people seem to be competing with each other to obtain some peculiar sort of status within the broader Japanese learning community. When I learned Japanese, I was learning it to learn Japanese and go to Japan and try and develop some sort of life there. I am competitive. I am status driven to some extent, as are we all. I'm not saying that those dynamics don't exist in my head or with respect to me and my attitudes towards the world. But when the competition has no utility other than the status it allows you to win within a community, a virtual community, an online community, then I would say that you should probably get a life and do something else. And I do not say that to be insulting or abusive. I say it because I'm made to feel very uncomfortable when I see people dumping thousands of hours of their youth into stuff that they're bad at. In a rational world in which people were being provided with some meaningful feedback about what they were doing, this person would have quit Japanese a long time ago. You can't justify putting thousands of hours into something because you kind of like it. You come to realize this as you get older. You have to be a bit more careful with your time. And I do think that the desire to post update videos, me speaking Japanese after 3 months, me speaking Japanese after 6 months, looking for likes and, I don't know, subscribers and thumbs up and positive comments on Reddit and all this stuff. That is presumably why this guy is still hammering away at Japanese after thousands of relatively futile hours, i.e. the hours that he's already put into it. I wish somebody had taken him to one side and told him explicitly, or even just that someone had kind of given him a nudge and said to him, help, stop it, you aren't good enough at this. There is a role for feedback. I didn't express that very well, but whether people had told him hypothetically, explicitly, or just nudged him in the direction of figuring it out for himself, I wish someone had stepped in and explained to him somehow that he was, that he would probably have been better off putting his time into something else. And I do think that these peculiar online communities that now exist create forms of status competition that impel people to pursue things that they should actually have quit a long time ago, or perhaps not taken up in the first place. I don't know exactly what the moral of the story is. I don't think I have any clever way of summing this up. But if you are thinking of sinking a lot of time into Japanese or something like it, then ask yourself whether it's really worth it. Compare yourself, if you get the opportunity, to other people, and if other people seem to progress much more rapidly than you do, then ask yourself some hard questions about the possibility of looking back on not an entirely wasted youth, but a somewhat wasted youth 20 years down the line, when you look back on what you did in your late teens or early 20s and realize that you wasted thousands of hours that you could have committed to something else, something more useful, something more important. Think hard about that and get feedback from other people if you can, and don't get too caught up in status-seeking competition as a part of online communities, the members of which you would not recognize in real life if you bumped into them. It's not actually worth it, in my opinion. It's not that important. There are many, many other things you can do in life. I know I'm rambling a bit here. This is a different format of video for me. Normally I plan things out a bit more in advance. I'm trying to move away from that, so this is perhaps less coherent than I would have liked it to be. But think hard about what you're doing. The thousands of hours you put into your Japanese, if you do put thousands of hours in, you can't get them back. And at the risk of sounding like a sort of a withered old bugger, the older you get, the more you come to see that it's important to use your time well. Thank you for listening. I hope that made sense, more or less. I'm happy to expand on any or all of that if people are interested. So there you go, that's it from me today. Thanks for listening to the end, if you did indeed listen to the end, and I will see you next time. Thanks very much. Ciao, ciao. Bye bye.